Hello everyone, this is part 38 of What If Naruto was trained by Anko, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto didn't waste any time and jumped into the fight. After making sure that every prisoner was safe and sound, he went straight for the thugs that were still trying to understand what was going on. Kiba and Shino had taken on the majority of those guys, but here and there one of them could be seen running around, and so Naruto didn't take any chances and finished them off before they could cause any more trouble. The camp was highlighted by the fires caused by the explosions, and it gave it a dreadful feeling of death and chaos. After disposing of another thug who had tried to disappear into the night, Naruto decided that he was going to look for those shinobi that were rumored to be at the camp. He had no doubt that Kakashi-sensei was currently fighting one of them, since he would have drawn attention to himself with setting off the explosion. Before he could move towards his destination, his instinct told him to duck. As he did just that, he saw several kunai and shuriken pass over his head, embedding themselves into the remains of what used to be a small wooden house. He looked up towards where the weapons had been thrown and noticed once of the shinobi he had been searching for standing there waiting for him. The man was wearing a typical shinobi outfit and a kumo headband with a slash carved into it, signaling he was a missing nin. "Good reflexes you have there," the man said before jumping down from his position. "But it's going to take more than that to get out of here alive. I guess that leaves me no choice than to get serious, doesn't it?" Naruto said calmly, looking at his adversary. The man didn't seem particularly strong or menacing, but he knew better than to get overconfident. "My name is Sora Akira, former Chunin from Kumo," the man said. "Namikaze Naruto from Konoha," Naruto said, introducing himself before unsheathing his sword slowly. Naruto didn't want to waste too much time and decided to be the first to attack. He focused some chakra into his legs so that he would gain some extra speed and shot forward towards his adversary, who seemed to be shocked at Naruto's speed. The man barely managed to evade the attack that would have decapitated him if he hadn't ducked at the last moment. The man wasn't helpless, however, and he retaliated with a kick aimed at Naruto's side. The attack, however, was blocked easily by Naruto, who hit the man in the head with the hilt of his sword before kicking him into the remains of the wooden building behind them. The shinobi from Kumo couldn't believe what was happening. He was getting trashed by this young man who he had thought being an easy prey. After the pain had subsided a little, he managed to crawl out of the rubble and stand up. The kick and the crashing into the building had resulted in a few broken ribs, and he had trouble breathing. Nonetheless, he wouldn't just let the boy win that easily. He had a few tricks up his sleeve. "Not bad, Namikaze. You're stronger than I suspected, but even if you defeat me, my fellow shinobi will kill your teammates soon enough," Akira said. "I'm the weakest out of all of them, and your friends have no idea who they are messing with. My teammates are more than capable of disposing of a few missing nin," Naruto said, confident in his friend's abilities and SKS. "I wouldn't be too sure about that if I were you." Akira laughed before he started doing some hand seals. He knew that this would be his last attack if the pain in his chest was any indication. It didn't matter anyway, since his partners wouldn't allow him to remain alive. It had been his job to guard the hideout that night, and he had failed, meaning they would kill him anyway. He started concentrating chakra around his hand and yelled out, "Raiten, Reikyu no Jutsu," and a ball made of lighting formed in his hand. He looked at Naruto and launched the ball towards him. Naruto was fascinated by the attack. It resembled the Rasengan in some way, but he knew the attack was much weaker than the Rasengan. The ball of lighting him straight in the chest, and Naruto screamed out in pain. Akira was confused when his attack worked. He thought that Naruto would have more than enough time to evade the attack, but apparently he had overestimated the young shinobi. His face had a large smile, and if his chest didn't hurt that much, he would have let out a yell of victory. But then he looked at Naruto, who seemed to just stand there, and to his shock, Naruto exploded in a puff of smoke. Akira looked around him, knowing that he had been tricked by a cage bunshin and that the real Naruto was hiding somewhere. Frantically looking around, he failed to notice Naruto crouching behind a tree just 10 feet away from him. Naruto did a few handseals and slammed his hands into the ground and said, Doton, Shiju Yari. Almost instantly dozens of spears made out of earth and rock shot out of the ground. Akira, who was still looking where his opponent had been hiding, didn't notice them until it was too late. Several of the spears LD his body, pinning him to the ground. He yelled out in agony before the spears disappeared and he fell to the ground bleeding heavily. Naruto approached him and paid his respects by nodding to the man. When did you make that B Bunshin? Akira managed to say. I made it when you were buried in the rubble after my attack. Naruto explained. You gave me more than enough time to come up with a strategy to beat you. Nicely done, kid. Akira said before the light disappeared out of his eyes. Naruto kneeled before the man and took away his possessions like his pouch and holster before taking out a storage scroll. He placed it on the ground and then rolled Akira's body on it. He focused some chakra into the seal and the body vanished, only leaving the scroll. Naruto figured that he could use the bounty that this man had just like he had used Zabuza's bounty. Everyone needed money, and while missions paid well, an extra bit of cash is always welcome. Naruto pocketed the scroll and went in search of his teammates. Sasuke was in a bad position. After he and Kakashi had detonated the exploding tags, they had separated and engaged in battle. He had disposed of a few thugs along the way, but those were hardly worth mentioning. He wanted to fight a strong opponent. He wanted someone that would challenge him and make him break his limits. He didn't really care about the abducted people since he didn't know any of them. That wasn't to say he agreed with how they were treated. He may be a brooding antisocial bastard, but he still had a heart. Innocents should never be involved with shinobi business, and he despised those who preyed on the weak. That was one of the reasons he wanted to be strong at all costs. The strong prey on the weak, just like his brother had done on the night he had said his family. On that night Sasuke was the prey, and he never wanted to feel like that again. He was ashamed that he had been useless and helpless to save his family, and he was even more ashamed of the fact that he had been terrified to the point of crying when his brother stood before him. From that day on he swore that he would become strong no matter what the prize was. His brother had instructed him to become strong so that they could fight again, and Sasuke had promised himself that when that day finally came he would kill his treacherous brother. He would bring back honor to the Uchiha name, and once again the Uchiha would be recognized as the strongest shinobi clan to have ever existed. That had been his motivation to live, to fight, and to become the best. Now, however, Sasuke was back to being the prey, and it infuriated him to no end. After disposing of those thugs, he had encountered a missing nin, and he had eagerly engaged into battle with the man. Sasuke had started his attack with a small kaiten jutsu, trying to surprise the man, but that hadn't worked out like he had planned. The attack never reached the man, as he created a giant wall rising from the earth, blocking the flames. When the flames the wall sank back into the ground, and Sasuke could see the man was now looking at him. Sasuke too could now see the man more clearly, and he had to admit that the man seemed very strong. The man was easily 6 feet tall and was sped with muscles. His face had a few scars with a Iwa headband around his end, but his eyes were what shocked Sasuke the most. The man's eyes showed experience, knowledge, and more than anything they showed recognition. Oh, what do we have here? An Uchiha? Last I heard that whole clan was said except 2 survivors. The man said, intrigued, looking at Sasuke. Sasuke didn't bother to reply and threw several kunai and shuriken at his opponent, who just evaded them or repelled them with his own weapons. Sasuke smirked and tried to engage the man with taijutsu. He threw a punch aimed at the man's T, but his fist was slapped away. He followed his attack with a low kick, but the man just jumped right over it. Sasuke was getting annoyed. Even with his Sharingan active, he couldn't hit the man. He continued to attack, but each time the man dodged or blocked his attacks with ease. You're not bad, little Uchiha, but you're not quite there yet, I'm afraid. The man said calmly while ducking under a punch. Sasuke was seething mad by how this was going. Not only was the guy blocking his every attack, he was also mocking him and his name. Sasuke continued his attack and tried to hit him with a kick to the man's face, but his foot was stopped when the man caught it with his hand. The man just grabbed Sasuke's foot with both hands and turned around before pulling Sasuke over his back and slammed him into the ground hard. Sasuke hit the ground hard and he felt the air being forced out of his lungs. He struggled to get up and breathed heavily. The hit had done some damage, but it was more the surprise of being caught that had done the mental damage. He hadn't seen anything even with his Sharingan activated. Normally his Sharingan would allow him to anticipate his opponent's attack and movements. He didn't quite understand what was going on and he didn't like that feeling one bit. What's the matter, little Uchiha? I hope I didn't scare you too much there. The man said, laughing. You don't scare me. I'm an Uchiha and nobody can defeat an Uchiha. Sasuke said, rising to the man's taunts. Nobody can defeat an Uchiha. Oh, that's a good one. The man laughed even louder. Listen, kid, I've fought with more than one Uchiha in my lifetime, and while they might have been formidable opponents, I was the one to walk away. Lies. Only an Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha. We're the strongest shinobi clan in the elemental countries. Sasuke said, angry. Look, I understand that you want to defend your family's honor and all that, but that's just pure nonsense. The man shrugged. No matter how strong you are, there's always someone stronger. You should remember that. I don't need the advice of the likes of you. I'm here to defeat you, and when I do, I have become even stronger than before. Sasuke said, smirking at the man. Very well, I was going to spare your life and only teach you a lesson in humility, but it seems that won't work. The man said, sighing loudly. The man seemed to disappear from where he was standing, and before Sasuke could look for him, he felt a fist impacting in his gut. Sasuke doubled over in pain from the hit, but before he could recover, he got hit a second time, making the pain even worse. For a moment, Sasuke thought he was going to throw up his insides, but a punch to his jaw hindered that. Sasuke was sent flying before crashing into the ground once again. The pain in his stomach and now his jaw was unbelievable, and he had trouble staying awake. He felt a hand grab hold of him and then being lifted into the air. You Uchiha always were a pain in the ass with your arrogance. The man said before releasing Sasuke and punching him again in the face. Sasuke felt his jaw break from the punch and dropped to ground several feet further from the man. His left eye was swollen shut from the previous hits and he could barely move, but he still tried to get up to his feet. When he finally managed to get to one knee, he raised his head and glared to the man. He refused to give up. He needed to get stronger so he could defeat his brother. He couldn't here, he had to live. The man was surprised at Sasuke's will to stand up, but he knew that the fight was over before it could begin. While the kid was strong and without a doubt talented for his age, he was nothing compared to himself. He was considered one of the strongest shinobi in his village before he declared himself a missing nin all those years ago, and now he was even stronger than before. The kid didn't stand a chance to begin with, and that's why he was willing to let the boy live had he not been so stubborn and arrogant. Also, the memories of his friends and family being killed by the Uchiha during the war were egging him on to dispose of the boy. I'm sorry for this kid, but this is the end of the line for you. The man said, rushing through some hand seals before placing them on the ground so he could execute his attack. Before he could, however, he noticed movement from his left side and he stopped his jutsu. He quickly took out a kunai and raised his hand and blocked a sword with relative ease. To his surprise, his attacker dissolved into mud after the attack and he knew he had been tricked. He turned back to the Uchiha he had been about to kill and saw a blonde shinobi standing in front of his former adversary. Naruto had just arrived in the nick of time and had seen that Sasuke was about to be killed by this man and had intervened by making a Tsuchi Bunshin and had that one attack while he went over to his fellow Konoha shinobi. Naruto knew that the man in front of him was strong. If Sasuke's injuries were any indication, he looked at the man and noticed how tall and muscled the man was. Judging from his body, the man was strong and agile, making it very hard for someone slower than him to be able to get in a hit. Sasuke had seen his attacker prepare for his final attack and had tried to move out of the way, but his body refused to work. He knew he had several broken ribs and probably a broken jaw as well. It would take several days before he would be well enough to move again, but in the face of death he tried nonetheless. Incapable of moving, he had to watch as the man placed his hands on the ground only to have him raise his hand to block an attack. He froze when not even a second later someone stood in front of him and he raised his head. What he saw next angered him greatly. In front of him stood no one else than the man he despised almost as much as his brother. Of all people who could have saved him, it had to be Namikaze Naruto. There was no way he was going to accept this humiliation. Move, Namikaze, I don't need your help. Sasuke said, trying to get up. Really? Because it seems to me that you're getting your ass kicked by this guy. Naruto said to him. Damn him and his pride. Naruto thought as well. Shut up, Dobe. I can handle this, Sasuke said before he fell back on the ground. The man had been surprised by the Tsuchi Bunshin but didn't have any trouble blocking the attack once he was aware of it. What had intrigued him more was the name of the blonde standing there. If he had heard correctly, then things had just gotten much more interesting. He wanted to leave, but now he decided to stick around a bit longer. You should listen to your friend little Uchiha, the man said to Sasuke. You're in no condition to fight, and even if you managed to get up it wouldn't change a thing. Shut up, I told you I don't you advice from anyone. Sasuke yelled out before passing out. It seemed that this last action had cost him his remaining energy. Naruto made a cage bunshin and told it to take Sasuke out of the camp to Hinata and Sakura so they could heal him. The clone nodded and picked up Sasuke before throwing him over his shoulder and disappearing into the dark forest that surrounded the camp. The original Naruto then turned to the man that had allowed him to take care of his comrade. Thank you for allowing that, Naruto said thankfully. No problem, I have no interest in the Uchiha. The man said. You however I want to know about. The Uchiha called you Namikaze if I'm not mistaken. That's right, my name is Namikaze Naruto of Konoha. Naruto nodded. I see, are you by any chance related to Namikaze Minato? The man asked again. That's my father's name, Naruto admitted. Well, I'll be damned, the man said shocked. I wasn't aware that Konoha's Yellow Flash had a son. It was a secret until a few months ago. Naruto explained to the man. You seem to have some history with my father. Sure did, kid. Your father was one of the few men that scared the hell out of my village's shinobi. The man said laughing. You know, he may have been our enemy, but he was without a doubt the man I admired the most during that stupid war. You fought my father? Naruto asked interested. I encountered your father several times, but only once did I fight him personally. The man admitted. Our superiors ordered a flee on sight if your father was present at the battlefield, so most of the time we fled. At the end of the war, however, we fought. It's a shame we're not on the same side, otherwise I would have been honored to hear your story about it. Naruto said, a bit sad. This man had gone against his father and lived to tell the tale, so he knew the man was incredibly strong. While that may be true, on the other hand, I'm curious to see what the son of that man is capable of. The man said, and he ran towards Naruto. Naruto nodded and mirrored the man's movements and ran straight to him as well. Naruto blocked a punch with his left arm and retaliated with a punch of his own, but it was blocked as well. Not giving up that easily, he lashed out with his leg, trying to hit the man in the ribs. It missed, however, as the man just jumped back a little bit, making the attack just miss by a few inches. Naruto, however, just continued his attack by placing his foot on the ground and attacked with his other leg by performing a roundhouse kick as well. This time, however, the man ducked under the kick and he pushed forward into Naruto's guard and tried to uppercut him in the jaw. Naruto threw his head back and the fist passed, but he could feel the little wind formed by the speed of the attack. Before Naruto could counterattack, his legs were kicked from underneath him with such force that he was lifted but in the air. For a second he found himself falling horizontally towards the ground, but then he got hit by two fists right in his chest area. Naruto was sent flying backwards and he had to force himself to twist in the air so he could land on his feet instead of on his backside. When he finally stopped, he was couching and breathing deeply from the hits. Good, that was impressive, the man acknowledged. Thanks, but I didn't even hit you once, Naruto said after recovering from the last attack. And you probably won't succeed in hitting me today. But tell you what, if you manage to hurt me even once, I will tell you who I am, and I'll even admit that you're capable of becoming the man your dad once was. The man said serious. I don't need your recognition, but you're on, Naruto said before making several cage bunshin, and he attacked once again. He and the clone started out with taijutsu, but it became clear that the man was vastly stronger and faster than Naruto was, and his clones were getting decimated one after another. Naruto realized that he wasn't going to win in close-ranged combat, so he jumped back and started doing some hand seals. When he finished his seals, he let out a huge stream of fire that went straight for his opponent, who just stood there waiting. At the last moment, a huge wall of earth blocked the incoming attack. Nice try, but your friend tried to do the same thing. The man chuckled before he heard something behind him. He heard someone calling out, "Futon, Daitoppa no Jutsu," and he smiled at how Naruto had used his cage bunshin to get behind him. The attack was fast and strong and would seriously injure or KO a shinobi if he got hit head-on, but to him this attack was slow and he had no trouble evading it. Naruto was a bit pissed that the man had evaded his attack so easily but couldn't help but feel good about this fight. Excellent strategy you had there. You had a bunch and pretend to be the real one while you sneaked behind me. I like it, but the man laughed, admitting he had been had. Naruto wanted to say something in return, but before he could do so a fist impacted on the side of his head, sending him to the ground. He looked up to see a Tsuchibunshin disappearing back into the earth. You're not the only one who can use clones. Naruto got up and grinned at the man. He didn't know when he had made that clone, but the attack sure had come as a surprise. He thought about what had happened and came to realize that the man was strong both in close-range combat as well as in long-ranged combat. This was something that took years to accomplish. Mostly people were good at either close or long-ranged fighting, but it took a lot of time and experience to be good at both. Alright, let's get a little serious here, shall we? The man said suddenly. Naruto blinked and for a moment he thought the man had just vanished. It was only his instinct that saved him from being hit from behind and he ducked under the kick. His opponent, however, wasn't finished, and before Naruto could turn around to face the man, he got rewarded with a devastating punch to the head. He stumbled a bit from the hit right into another attack where his opponent's clasped hands hit him right on the head. By this time Naruto's vision was blurry and he had trouble seeing, which made him very vulnerable to new attacks. To his surprise, the next attack didn't come and he got the time to recover a bit. Once he got his bearings back, Naruto attacked once again. He wouldn't just be a punching bag after all. But no matter how fast he attacked or how many punches or kicks he threw, he never managed to hit his opponent. Naruto was starting to get frustrated and it took him a few seconds before he calmed down enough to think clearly again. He was starting to get tired and the hits he had suffered to the head were taking their toll as well. He tried a desperate attack and put all of his power into the next punch. Naruto sighed as his hand was stopped by the man like it was nothing. He jumped back, trying to come up with a strategy to get out of this fight. He was way over his head and he knew it. The man in front of him was incredibly strong and it remained Naruto of the spars he had with Ero Sennin a few months back. You're too strong for me. I hate to admit it, but I don't stand a chance against you. Naruto said, breathing deeply, disappointed in himself. Good. As a shinobi you have to know your limits. There are times when you'll be facing an enemy that you can't defeat. The man nodded. It takes a great amount of humility to be able to accept the fact that you can't win. That's something the Uchiha didn't have, and that makes you the better man. Doesn't mean I like it. Naruto said. Nobody likes to be confronted with their flaws or things they can't do, but a real man takes those things and works hard to get stronger. The Iwa shinobi said. You've shown that you're willing to admit your shortcomings and even more willing to work on them, and that is something I admire. I'm not done yet, Naruto said, taking his sword and holding it in front of him. Then come and show me your resolve. The man nodded. I'll take your attack head on. Naruto didn't waste any time and rushed towards his opponent with his sword in his hands. He raised his arms so he could attack from above, and just before he reached his opponent he jumped, bringing his sword down. The man just stood there and watched as Naruto approached. He was impressed with the boy, but such an attack wouldn't harm him. He raised his arm and blocked the sword. Naruto didn't know what happened. The man had blocked his sword with his bare arm and he didn't even get a cut. His sword was capable of cutting through rock but was unable to cut this man's skin. What the hell was going on here? The man didn't wait until Naruto had recovered from the shock and threw punch after punch, hitting Naruto several times before he could do anything. The man's punches came faster and faster and soon Naruto was unable to evade or block them. Punch after punch, Naruto got hit, and when he was sent flying thanks to a powerful hit to his chest, he almost lost consciousness. He hit the ground hard and he was hurt badly. He knew he had several broken bones and more than likely he had a concussion as well. This fight had gone wrong very fast. He coughed up some blood and managed to sit up before glaring at his opponent. What do you say, kid? One last attack before we finish this, the man said calmly. Naruto didn't answer but focused all his energy into getting up. It took him about a minute before he stood up on shakily legs, but he had done it. He picked up his sword and readied it for his final attack. He raised his arms and held his sword to his right above his head. He didn't have the energy to make a cage bunshin, so this attack would have to do it. He would force everything he had into it. His opponent too was ready for his last attack, although he had more than enough left for several attacks. The boy was strong, there was no doubt about it. The fact that he was standing after that last attack told him more than enough. The boy had power and skills, but it wasn't enough for him to win. He would honor the boy by using his favorite jutsu to finish the fight. But first he would let the Namikaze attack. He was curious to see what the boy had planned. Naruto was ready and he had put as much chakra as possible into the seal on his sword. He noticed that the man was waiting for him to attack and nodded. As fast as he could, he brought down his sword in a diagonal way from above right to below left and yelled out, "Tengoku Seiden Kase no Jutsu," once again relying on his favorite kenjutsu technique. The cutting wind raced towards the man, who was looking at the attack with wide eyes before he brought up both arms in front of him to block the attack, only to be knocked back several feet. After blocking the attack, he lowered his arms and looked at Naruto before looking at his arm. To his surprise, a small cut drawing a little blood appeared where the attack had impacted. "Nicely done, kid. You managed to wound me even if it's only this little cut," the man said loudly. "You're worthy of knowing who I am. In my village I am known as Stone Ox. This isn't my real name, but most know me by this name. It was a pleasure fighting you, Namikaze Naruto, and hopefully you'll be much stronger by the time we meet again." The man, now known as Iwa's Stone Ox, then went through some hand seals before several dozen small rocks lifted from the ground and floated around him. He then raised his hands, making the rocks float even higher, and then in one fluid motion his arms went down, sending the rocks into Naruto's direction. Naruto, who was too tired to move, and the rocks battered his body until he lost consciousness. The last thing he heard and saw was Stone Ox saying goodbye before darkness claimed him. When Naruto opened his eyes, he noticed that he was in a familiar room. He recognized the room as a room in Tazuna's house, and he wondered how he got here. The last thing he remembered was being hit by dozens of rocks and then darkness. He sat up and tried to get out of bed. His body was still sore from the fight, his legs were heavy. With much effort he got dressed and went down the stairs to find his friends and teammates. He passed another room and saw Sasuke lying in bed, still unconscious and hurt. For a second he pitied the poor boy, because unlike Naruto he didn't have healing powers, meaning he would have to heal naturally, which took much longer even when he got help from 2 medic nins. He heard several voices in the living room and he opened the door, causing the people inside to turn towards the opening door. When Hinata and Sakura saw that it was Naruto, they shot up and helped him sit down. They gave him a lecture that he wasn't allowed to be up yet, but he told them that he was feeling fine. Hinata knew about his healing powers, so she didn't push it as hard as Sakura, but she still agreed that he should have stayed in bed. "How are you feeling, Naruto?" Kakashi asked. He had been concerned about his sensei's son, but most of all he had been afraid of Anko's wrath if something happened to her boyfriend while under his command. Anko would attack first and ask questions later, he was sure of that. Now that Naruto was up, things wouldn't be that bad. "I'm fine, just a bit sore and a little headache, but otherwise I'm doing okay," Naruto said. "What happened?" "Kiba and Shino found you after they finished disposing of the thugs. You were hurt pretty badly according to our medic nins," Kakashi said. "Pretty badly?" Sakura snorted. "He had 4 broken ribs, broken arm and fractured hip. Not mention the cuts and wounds all over his body. Can you tell us what happened?" Hinata asked. Naruto then told them what had happened and how he had defeated the first shinobi with ease. He told them about how he found Sasuke in the nick of time, so save him from that last attack, and how he had fought it with Stone Ox. When Kakashi heard that name he gasped, but told Naruto to continue his story. Naruto also told them how he didn't stand a chance against the man and how easily the man defeated him. "Do you know the man, Kakashi-sensei?" Kiba asked him. "Actually I do know him, even if it's only by name." Kakashi nodded. "It was during the 3rd Shinobi War where Konoha was fighting Iwa. I was just promoted to Junin status and Naruto's dad was my sensei and squad leader at the time. It was a time of death and despair beyond anything I had ever seen. Friends and family were left and right. I hope none of you will have to deal with such things." "Wait a minute, the 3rd war was almost 20 years ago. You were a Junin at such a young age?" Sakura asked, surprised. She knew Kakashi-sensei was strong, but this was unbelievable. I made Chunin at age 6 and was promoted to Junin when I was 12. Kakashi shrugged, shocking everyone. I thought it was impossible to graduate from the academy at such young age. Shino said, surprised as well. You have to remember that it was war at that time. Everyone capable of fighting was needed at the front. Of course I didn't always fight at the front lines, but sometimes it was needed. Kakashi said. So how did you hear of this, Stone Ox? Hinata asked before Kakashi got lost in his memories. Oh yeah, well he was one of the strongest Iwa shinobi at the time. Kakashi said. You see, while Konoha had the yellow flash, Iwa had the Stone Ox. Both of them were feared by their enemies, and to my knowledge they only fought once. He said, looking at Naruto, who nodded. Anyway, I don't know what happened during the fight, but both of them lived. A few months later I heard that he became a missing nin because they held him responsible for not King Yondaime. The rest of the day was spent by hearing the reports of the others, and Naruto was glad that each and every hostage they had freed was safe and sound. Some of them would have to spend a few days in the hospital, but all of them would recover. Today the authorities would check out the mine where the people had to work, and maybe whole of Wave would profit from what they found instead of a few missing nin. Kakashi told him that he had to deal with a pair of shinobi who were strong at working together, but altogether they were no match for him. It took him a while to get rid of them thanks to their extraordinary teamwork. In the end the mission had been completed, and once Sasuke and Naruto were healed they would head back to Konoha. A few miles from where the Konoha group was resting, 5 figures were hiding in a cave. They had been following the group for a few days now and had been waiting for the right time to strike. Their mission was simple: get Uchiha Sasuke. So when do we attack? One of them asked. Relax, Sasuke is no good to us in his current state. One answered. We wait until they're healed and then we approach him. He better get healed fast before I lose my patience. A girl's voice said. Calm down, Tayuya. You know that Orochimaru-sama needs Sasuke to be in perfect condition. The boy said before repositioning his glasses. F you Kabuto prick, Tayuya screamed back at him. Just because you're Orochimaru-sama's favorite boy toy doesn't mean you can order me around. Kabuto sighed. The past few days had been no even for someone like him. Each and everyone in his group had short tempers and were easily pissed off and agitated. He just hoped he managed to control them long enough so he could finish this mission. Orochimaru wouldn't be pleased if they failed in capturing Uchiha Sasuke. Then he grinned as he remembered that the Kyuubi brat was with him as well. He had asked Orochimaru if he could deal with the blonde, but he had been forbidden to K the boy. He had protested at first, but one glare from his master and he obeyed. However, that didn't mean he couldn't teach the blonde a lesson. After all, he had to get some payback from their last fight. His smile vanished as he remembered just how long it had taken for him to recover. Now he would have his revenge and he would bring back Uchiha Sasuke. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.